At this point, we're reaching, I think, the end of this lecture series because we pretty much have explored all the different elements of our design process: shaping, texturing, slicing. The last piece that might actually, or the last element or step that maybe we can look into inside your design process is trying now to print actually this iron, because so far everything is digital and it can look really nice, but we don't really know if I put my hand through the handle and hold it, will it really feel good in my hand? So let me show you, for example, some easy approaches or steps how we can turn this one into a printable shell. And the problem, for example, right now we have is this is solidified, so it's a solid. We can print it, will be slow, heavy, and will be expensive. To shell this actually out, to give it a thickness, all I need to do is actually go to add modifier, solidify, and for example, in my case I use metric, so 3mm. If you work with inches, I think 3mm is let's see, imperial, 118 thousandths of an inch. So you see, you can always, for example, switch between metric and imperial all the time. Doesn't really matter. And now the order right now is very important. So the solidify, for example, should go above the edge split and at least go above the first Boolean command. But it can follow after the subsurface and the mirror. And there you see, now it's nicely shelled out. So what did this actually really do? Let's turn those pieces off so you actually can see what's happening. So again, the order of the modifier stack is what is really important. We have the mirror modifier that generates a complete model. This coarse polygon model, we soften it a little bit with the subsurface modifier, and then we apply, or not apply, but we pass then this softened design to the solidify modifier, who is going to create a thickness for us. And then this shelled this shelled object we pass then to the Boolean modifier, who is cutting out the slice. And then, just for presentation, I have an edge split. In the rendering, this in the 3D print, this edge will be sharp anyway. So yeah, that was basically step one for how to add a shell to kind of like this piece. Now let's say I would like to have my dials added to the top part as well. So let me go to here. So here's my dial. This is called dial top. And let's make sure that all my normals face to the outside. So again, if you in edit mode and you go to the property panel, normals, okay. So I would like my dial to be included into this computer model. So when I print it, it's the handle and the dial all together. So I can add another Boolean modifier. But it's important that this task, for example, comes after the slicing. So for example, dial top. And instead of intersect, it should be union, because I'm going to add it to this piece. Perfect, you see? Or not really perfect. because you can see there are some interesting things actually happening. There's a small piece of, yeah, geometry sticking through, but that's not really a problem. So what we can do in this case is we basically have to change our dial a little bit so the surface remains and stops inside this line I just marked, so it's inside the shell. So having this set, let's go to here and, for example, I select this lower edge and I'm going to show a new command. So you can type in spacebar, shear, and then what shear basically is doing, lower left corner you see there is an X or an Y for an axis. I press Y, and then, or X, you see where my cursor is, there are some errors. So if I move my mouse now up and down, or actually down and, yeah, more down, you see how I'm, yeah, kind of like modifying it. So I try to get this edge kind of like following kind of like the shape of my handle. Okay, so let's see if maybe this already was enough. So now to update it, here maybe have to go into edit mode and object mode, and not yet really. So let's take a look at this one again. And then there actually I can see this piece is not even really where it should be, so I move this slightly up, maybe till there, and those parts maybe I do a shear again, but try to flatten this a little bit like this. Okay, and then I move it up. And maybe one additional shear along the y-axis. I'm nearly there. Maybe like this. Let's see. Maybe edit mode. Let's go to layer 6 and rotating around seems to show that actually everything fits. So again, you see the trick was trying to have the button end inside the volume of my material thickness. Okay. Now there's only one tiny problem left. The button is solid, and you see there is a hole. So what we're going to do, we basically will create another cylinder which we can stick in and just simply cut out. So to do this, I go to this part, and I'm actually duplicating Shift-D, a link or a loop, press P to separate it. And by having that mesh separated, you see it's now an object on its own. I move it to layer 7, and then I'm going to extrude and move it down. So for example, it overshoots. But of course, right now this shell is at the, how could I say that? it defines the outside shell. I need to shrink this one. So the easiest way to do this is here. Actually, I can delete all this because I don't need it anymore. I can go into edit mode. I want to make sure my normals are flipped, so I pressed Control N. And hold on, I noticed my screencast keys aren't showing. So I would like this one to shrink, so I have kind of like a thickness of 3 millimeters. So I can press spacebar and type in the command solidify. So instead of using the modifier, I also have the command solidify. And then down here, no, I'm working in metric. So this means, for example, 0.003. This is 3 millimeters. You see that? So, because it's like millimeters, 1 centimeter, 10 centimeter, 1 meter, because it's using the metric system. And I think if we do this with Imperial, I'm just curious where this would be. So I'm just selecting this outside shell again, spacebar, solidify, and let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay. Anyway, for this stuff, I think very often it's really best to work with the metric system anyway. So, and then I delete this. So I end up actually just with this tiny cylinder. Control N to make sure my directions are flipped. And then maybe the top part I can fill by pressing F. Maybe move this a little bit up. And this roundness, for example, well, if I want to, I could extrude this face and then scale it a little bit. So you see kind of like the shape I have, but it doesn't really matter, or it's not really important to even match this roundness. So I will just leave it here. The material thickness here will be a little bit uneven, but again, for a quick rapid prototype for print, that's really more than sufficient. So I'm going to shade this one smooth, and maybe let's call this one top dial core out. Okay, so that means I can go now to this object, modifiers. For example, here also I call this one add dial, cut section. So you see I can name those modifiers. And I'm going to add one last one. And for example here, core out dial. Okay, so Boolean core out. And currently it's using the intersect. Of course that's wrong, so maybe the difference. And yeah, so there it is. Let's make an Alt B view. And this looks pretty good. And I think this would be, in this case, yeah, nearly ready to be sent to the 3D printer.